Metal Québécois, or should we say black metal Québécois, because, well, this is what it is, black metal from Quebec, Canada. I would be lying to you if I wasn't saying that Thesyre from Canada, Quebec, that is, would be one of my favorite bands of the scene. Well, basically because this is a band that I found way before the so-called Quebec scene came into my understanding, and before I got to know more of those, say, bands of later age. This band has been founded in 1995, so it's old as hell, but it took quite a few years before the band actually released their first CDs, that is, albums. And then in 2009 the band went on a hiatus that took more than 10 years. Now with this review I am gonna tell you a little bit of these comeback albums maybe I should call. Well, not technically. One album is a comeback thing and one is before the actual comeback. Also later in this month you will find my classic take on the first Thesyre album, but now let's focus on the more recent material by the band. What we have here are two albums called Résistance and Shift. The band has always pretty much focused on very short names such as existence and duality, and this is no exception. Both of these albums are very blunt with their names, and also they are roughly some 30 minutes give or take, as it has been in the previous cases as well. Let's start with the 2009 one called Résistance. What I'm saying in the kind of a goofy French version is that, well, it's not exactly Resistance, but Résistance because of the accent in the name. And here you have the track list, which I guess is not properly showing to you. Zoom is not working as intended. Anyway, here you can see all these track names are in French, and which is no surprise considering that Quebec is, I guess, the most French spoken area in the whole country, or at least of those big cities. And here in the cover we have these classic Thesyre logos, which have been present more or less on all the albums. And once again, no lyrics whatsoever inside. Instead of some interesting graphics, you will notice recycling symbol, you will find nuclear symbol, you will see so-called Guevara and so forth. Lots of interesting symbols from United Nations to NATO and so forth. So I think there is a kind of a strong message to be said without words. But as the saying goes, one image is a story of 1,000 words, or something like that. And now with the recent album Shift, which also has this logo, I think in a cooler way than ever before. And this is the so-called comeback album from 2020, June actually. And very much being true to the band's style. Still no lyrics, but this time actually a lineup is mentioned here, being Eric Sire, the writer of lyrics and music mostly, but also Zord doing drums and guitars. So a little bit more information is this time given. And this is not fully French. It's actually kind of having fun with both languages, which then again I think is very much kind of like, I wouldn't call it homage, but kind of true to its Quebec roots. Let's take a look at the band's metal archive site while I'll tell you a little bit of the music, that is, what it's actually made of. As you can see, this is from 1995 that is, sorry, and here is the current lineup. I don't know why it has so many members mentioned here. Maybe it has really changed, or maybe this is just outdated. I really don't know. I don't want to do guessing. And here you can also see the discography for the band. Now I got to know Thesyre early 2000s. I'm not sure if, I didn't think it was 2003, more like 2004, 2005 I guess. And then I got these two different albums quite soon after one another, or maybe at the same time. I really don't remember, 15 years back. And I remember liking all of these albums quite a bit because their style is what I would call is kind of a punkish and rockish black metal. very much like the same thing what Darkthrone was doing actually at the time. So kind of a moving on from the 1990s second wave black metal to a little bit more modern, kind of a more hateful, aggressive, violent black metal, but also simplifying their music with later on. And I think Thesyre actually, I don't know if they actually jumped the bandwagon. I really don't want to think like that, but to be honest, I think they did something different. And that might be the reason why these review scores are relatively low. For example, I would totally disagree with this 46% because in my opinion, Thesyre is more like 8 out of 10 album. Now I kind of slipped what I was thinking about it instead of, with the classic review, but it doesn't really matter. I mean, these are just scores. We're talking about music here. But what I really like with Thesyre's music is that it's just not the kind of a typical black metal. It's kind of a more middle fingerish. Much like they said on the first full-length album with this FOAD, that is Screw Off and Die. I was self-censoring myself. I don't know why. And I think they had this statement both on verbal side as well as the music side. That is showing you the middle finger and not being one of those, hey, let's bow to every direction and let's please everybody. More punkish, more hardcore-ish, more rockish, and yet still very, very fierce black metal, which I think is very cool. Now, I don't really agree with this black trash metal statement because to me, this kind of a trash is not really there. When I'm talking about black trash, I'm thinking bands like Niflheim, I'm thinking bands like Au Noir and all that stuff. Maybe Destroyer 666, maybe Usurper. But Thesyre is, in my opinion, way more towards this kind of a punkish and rockish side and kind of a hardcore-ish because it's so much hateful. It's not this kind of a, let's do this kind of a semi-technical trash metal riffing. While you could hear some part of that, black trash is, in my opinion, too far-fetched to say. But now about Resistance and Shift. They're actually a little bit different than the 3 previous albums. And I really can't say I'm too happy about it. Now, don't get me wrong. I actually liked Resistance and Shift, but maybe not as much as the 3 first one. Now, the curious thing is, with Resistance, the band actually stepped in a kind of a bigger label with Osmose Records. I don't actually remember if Existence was already with that, but already with this kind of, the band seemed to be climbing up the ladder, and then suddenly a long break, and now they're back into a smaller label. In my opinion, so far, Resistance is actually the weakest of the band's albums. That is not to say it's weak, because it's not. It's a good album, but just not as good as the previous ones. Now, that gave me a little bit of worrying state about Shift, because obviously when you change a little bit your style and you kind of have some kind of a shift in momentum and style, I was like worried that like maybe they're going through all the way wrong direction with, band members getting older and the vision is getting different, maybe clearer, I don't know. But Shift is actually taking a little bit a step back in a good way. So in my opinion, while they are very, very close in quality towards each other, I think Shift is actually a little bit better. So to me, it seems like this road is getting like, okay, we're riding slowly and steadily and all that cool, and then a little bit bump, and then Shift is a little bit back up. And all I can say is that this is a good and solid discography all the way through. While my favorites are the 3 first ones, that is not to say you shouldn't be checking out these 2 albums, because the style is still very, very different from most bands in the world, and that's something that I really like and respect, because, I mean, copycatting some of the cooler bands, be it Burzum, Darkthrone, Mayhem, or Marduk, I don't know, it's just boring, and unless you can really beat the master in the game, you're gonna be a kind of a second-class citizen, that is, be a great band. But what Thesyre is doing is a little bit different, and even if they are doing a little bit weaker album, I think it's still more interesting because it's, well, different style. It's not copycatting anybody, it's just actually dodging the kind of usual paths and making, as such, trampling the path their own. So it's an interesting band, definitely, which I think you should be checking out. First of all, no lyrics whatsoever. Can't be seen kind of like, okay, it's so lame, they're not really saying things out loud. but it's also a statement. Sometimes the words you don't say mean actually more than the words you do. And I should know because I talk a lot. I talk way too much. So I think it's an interesting take on the black metal scene. And also because these topics are not really your typical, let's go out in the woods, worship Satan, let's do singing about these forests and dark nights and darkness in general. This is more of kind of a, I don't know if it's political as such, but it's definitely something different. And you can really feel the vibe in the music. It's not for everybody. I mean, if you're just going all the way back to your 1990s medieval fantasy castles with, you know, darkness and evil topics and all that stuff, then this is not your cup of tea. Rather pick a Game of Thrones books and listen to your early behemoth material. But if you find something different, interesting, go for Thesyre. A lot of words to be said, and I think too much is already being said. Go for the music, don't believe me, don't believe the hype, check it out for yourself. Thank you for watching this DUEL review, take care my friends, and see you soon with more stuff coming your way.